We had a chat a few months ago, and you're the kind of person I've been watching online for a long time and thinking, oh gosh, like how does she keep doing that? Like she's so impressive. And I know it's funny to hear that, but that's the truth. And then when we spoke again, I think we have these conversations where we just talk for half an hour and then think, oh, hang on a sec.
What do we
Um, yeah. And so I wanted to share this sort of conversational ability that you have with my audience, and the connection, because I love celebrating connection. And of course, I love a good transformation journey.
Yes.
So if you don't know me, I'm Natalie Coulson. I run a business called Amped Up Marketing and Communications. I specialize in personal branding as well as content marketing, do all sorts of things, as we all do as multi-passionate entrepreneurs and people and humans in general. But today I have Toni Lontis with me, and Toni's done so many things, it's hard to condense her bio down into something quick. But Toni was a nurse for 35 years, which is impressive on its own. And now you've built up a huge profile online, and you've broadcasted hundreds of shows for yourself, but also for clients.
Yes.
Across the world, a lot in the US, but I believe in other parts of the world as well. So
yes.
Welcome. And I'm just looking forward to sharing your story, because
Thank you.
It's very inspiring.
Oh, thank you, Natalie. It's a real privilege to be on the other side of the interview desk and just relax and let someone else ask the questions for once. Thank you for your kind words. That's really lovely.
So take me back. So you were a nurse, going about your daily work as a nurse. Was there a single moment where you thought, got to do something different, or I want to get out of this, I want to build a profile? Or was it or a broadcasting career, or what was that like? Was that a moment, or was it a series of moments?
It was more like a series of moments and an evolution. So I have to take the audience back to, so growing up, I was born with a congenital facial defect, which left me with left-sided facial palsy, which impacted on my self-esteem. Dysfunctional family, trauma on trauma on trauma throughout early and middle adult life, culminating in a breakdown in my 40s. Up to that point in time, I'd stayed in nursing, clinical management, and then into big statewide projects. So managing clinical networks across the state for maternity and neonatal, for surgical services, and then a big expansion project, hospital expansion project. So high level, and had a breakdown. And that was the start of my reckoning and self-discovery and learning and healing and all of that.
And I'll stop you there for a second.
Yes.
People will often use the word breakdown
Yes.
casually. I've certainly been through what was not a very pleasant experience, which you could call a breakdown. What did your breakdown look like?
Yeah, great question, Natalie, because it is different for many people, but mine was in the lead up in the years to that point, I felt like I was walking underwater and that tears were threatening to envelop me at any moment. The day that I lost the plot, I guess you could say, something simple happened at work. And I had to have a talk with one of my colleagues, and I ended up in tears and I could not stop crying. So by the end of, and I went home, went off on sick leave, but by the third day I was still crying and could not stop, could not understand, could not get a handle on what the heck was going on. Went to a GP, explained my life, what had been happening, etc. He sat me down and said, Toni, you're mentally and physically exhausted. Your brain has decided enough is enough, and it's not going to allow you to get through this time without doing some work on yourself and on your healing and getting yourself into a better state. So that was the crux. When the GP sort of said to me, if you don't start healing and dealing, you're not going to make it to 50, because I'd started by that stage to have some pretty dark thoughts and suicidal thoughts and that's not great. That's no human being should get to that point and not have help. So I'm pretty passionate about mental health and talking openly and honestly about it. So that space and time was very black, very dark, very horrible. And horrible things happened in that space as well. So I was about to get married. My daughter disclosed a history of sexual abuse, and that happened at that time as well. And that just made everything worse, Nat, just worse. So that was the beginning of my life changing, and I was 40 or 41, I think, about that. I spent the next 10 years learning about trauma and being in quite intense therapy and getting through and managing depression and anxiety. It was a hard 10 years, lots of hard work, but the culmination was coming out the other side and writing a book, which was the start of the journey that I'm on now.
And you mentioned in your bio on LinkedIn, because I did stalk that, which is another reason to have a good bio on LinkedIn, by the way, because, you don't know who's reading it, and gleaning information about you that's really useful.
Yeah.
So that promoting that book then led to conversations with an American broadcaster or American company. I've forgotten the exact.
It was company. So what happened was I decided that, but as I started to heal, part of my therapy had been to write and journal, and my therapist had encouraged me to write. And so as I started to talk a little bit about coming out the other side, this is like 10 years later, and talk about my story, people kept saying, you need to write, you need to write, you need to write about this. And I said, well, it's a pretty dismal story to write about. And people kept saying, well, no.
But it's not once you've come out the other side. Yeah, you
It's
can't
not
sit
once you
there
come
and
out the other
write,
side.
I feel terrible. That's not a story, but yes.
Correct. And so I did that and thought, okay, I'm going to now embark on a speaking and author career, and I'm going to be a bestseller, yada, yada, yada. That's not quite what happened. So I did a lot of education, self-education, business education, social media and marketing. And I knew that I had to increase my social media presence, and that's what I did. And on LinkedIn, I'd started to do that. In the background, I'd gone on to produce the audiobook, and I was going to get an actress to voice narrate it. And the producer kept saying, no, you need to do it yourself. And I'm like, no. Someone else can do that. And she's like, no, I'm going to help you do this. We're going to do it together. You need to read your story. So a very powerful process. There's something different between writing words and then actually speaking out your story. So it was another healing point and another moving forward point. And at the end of that, she sat me down and said, Toni, there's something about your voice, your energy, and your persona. You should be in media. And I again said, hell no, never gonna happen. I am an imperfect 50-year-old that would not look good on any sort of media. That was my response to her. But
which is actually crazy.
Yes, but
Because
that's how I felt.
Yeah, that's how you felt. Yeah.
That's how I felt. I felt that I was not perfect enough to show up in media, let alone social media, let alone Facebook Lives, anything like that. So I still am an introvert, but the thought of appearing in front of people was horrendous for me. I had not had decent I got the first photos that I actually looked at myself and liked when I was 55. I hated photos. I hated all of that. But this is what happens when you start on that journey of developing who you might be outside of healing, outside of trauma, and outside of depression and anxiety. The media guy in the US, I asked him a question about podcasting. Like, what is podcasting? I think was the question. He come back to me and said, well, why would you podcast when you can live stream and get a podcast anyway? And I'm like, what? I don't understand. How does that work? And so that was the thing. And so that year was my year of saying yes, no matter how petrified I was. And I did it. I started radio live streaming. Didn't have the video, just the microphone and me. First 6 months, sick to the pit of my stomach every time I got on the damn show. I'm like, I can't do this. And then the little voice, yes, you can. Yes, you can. What happened though, Nat, was that people started to say, I love being interviewed by you. I've never told someone that before. I feel safe when I talk to you. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be the conduit for people feeling safe because I'm passionate about people's stories. I'm passionate about their trauma. I'm passionate about their entrepreneurial journey. So all of that sort of started as Radio Toni, evolved to Toni TV, and now we've just launched our own TV network, Netflix for Women, Everyday Women's Network.
And so I think part of this story where I see a lot of people getting stuck is in the bit between, ideally you don't have a massive breakdown. Like that is not
I wouldn't
recommended.
recommend that.
However, generally there's some sort of reason that people want to make that transition away from a 9-to-5 job. They've got a passion for something. They're driven to achieve something, to share a message, create impact. But how do you actually, because what I see is people struggling with, okay, I need to, you read about all the things you should be doing to get your voice heard. And I'm really passionate about people finding their voice. And this is exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about. Yeah. How do you wake up and go, set up the streaming service and connect? All the tech, for one thing, is like a nightmare sometimes. And like, that's enough. Oh, this is too hard. I'm going to walk away from it.
See, that's the thing. I had the same reaction. So for me, it had to be easy. It had to, as a middle-aged woman, I needed to understand how it works. Now, I don't confess to always understanding, but I have a general, and that was just me educating myself. And it's also the part in there that's important for people is to back yourself, number one, show up day in, day out, which is another part of the piece. So I showed up no matter how I was feeling. And there's some days where I was shaking before the show, and I just kept doing it. And eventually you start to go, all right, this is okay. I'm safe. It's all good. And you keep going. And then you start to get feedback from people, and that keeps you going on the track. And I actually feel like everyone has a path that they follow, or a vision or a desire. And early on in the piece, I had a vision of connecting women. Back then it was like having my own radio station with lots of women connected on it. And that sort of grew and evolved as tech changed. And as I learned more, the vision got bigger and the trajectory of learning got bigger. And there's amazing tech out there, and you don't actually have to do it alone. So I leverage experts in the US. That's where I started. So I use their tech and their systems to broadcast me across the world. And once I'd been doing that, and I still work with these guys, I love them to death. Big shout out to BBS Radio TV out of Texas. Those guys rock. They are divine human beings. So we still do that, but then I've gone on and built my own platform, and I will be able to live stream out of that platform once I test the latest round of programming, which the guys have just set up, and I'm going to try and hopefully test later today.
So I think the key takeaways there are always people to help you. It doesn't mean you need to spend, thousands of dollars either. Correct. There are people to help you. Tech keeps on changing. So just kind of get in wherever you can and just start, and then don't let those sort of things put you off. And then I think I've noticed too, the showing up every day part is actually really crucial, even if you feel like you're talking to nobody.
Correct.
So,
And I'm telling you, honestly, I was literally talking to no one. But the thing is that if you do something on the internet, like streaming, someone down the track 20, 30 years later might actually hear what you
20,
say.
30 years later, hopefully not.
It's going to stay around forever. So my great-granddaughter will be able to Google her great-nana and go, oh, wow, Nana said that. That's the thing. So it's not always about creating instant success.
Create, yeah, it's the longer
The
term impact.
legacy and the impact. And if one person, one woman in particular, hears me tell my story and that helps her get through an hour of a day that's really difficult, then my work's done. So my aspirations, whilst the vision is big, the daily aspirations are small. Just one person once a day, every single day. Yeah.
Yeah, and that does simplify it a hell of a lot. So just looking at some numbers, so you currently, and look, we can get carried away with the amount of followers, right? Because
Correct.
followers is, the reality is not every one of your followers is seeing everything you do. There
That's right.
are a lot of people in there. But anyway, not to play it down, I'm just kind of giving some context,
Yeah.
because you can do a lot with a small number of followers. But not to take away from your success, you have, over 33,000
Oh, wow.
LinkedIn followers. And then when
Cool.
I checked earlier on, I think Instagram, you've got like 14,000 or something.
Yeah.
How the hell did you do that?
Again, so I got education around the best way to do things. And so where LinkedIn was concerned, back in the day when LinkedIn allowed you to connect to more people than they do now, that was what I did morning and night. I connected to as many people as I could who had similarity of interest, similarity of business, and who might be someone good to have in my network. And I did that religiously. The same with Insta and the same with Facebook, the same with Twitter, the same with YouTube. So it's that daily work, particularly around LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's particularly good for business. So back then, I think you could connect to like 250 a day. So I did 250 a
That's
day.
manual, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's manually connecting, looking at people's profile, going, okay, I love what they're doing. Their business is this. They might be interested in some of the interviews that we're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Connect. And then having a conversation. Hi, this is what I'm doing. Love to connect at some stage. And you know what the results are. Sometimes people say yes, sometimes people say no. But I did it the old-fashioned way. Now, of course, there's other ways of doing that in bigger ways now. But once you get to a certain state, then now people tend to connect with me versus we still connect to people every day, but we don't have to do it as much as we used to do because we're at a certain level. And with YouTube, when you're streaming live into YouTube, it just grows all the time. So yes, slowly and assuredly, I've done that. So for anyone, those numbers around LinkedIn, I started with 253 connections who were family and friends.
And
guys.
when was that?
2019.
Not that long ago.
It seems like a long time ago, Nat, but no, you're right. It's not that long
3
time.
years. Yeah, that's super inspiring. And so what was going through your head as you were, because that's a lot of time and a lot of dedication, and it's that consistency that is often spoken about. So like, how did you kind of go, well, I could be doing something else with my time, but I'm going to hit this. I'm going to keep going with this.
I actually, so I started with Facebook and quickly realized that LinkedIn was a better leverage from a business perspective. And so I just allocated dedicated time to LinkedIn morning and night and did it religiously. I was less dedicated to Facebook and Instagram and more dedicated to LinkedIn and then YouTube. Because they're our main platforms. And then following on from that, we discovered that Pinterest is an amazing place to be as well. And so our primary platforms are LinkedIn, YouTube, and Pinterest, with a little bit of Insta, Twitter, and Facebook thrown in.
And a lot of people listening, and certainly people that I'm working with, would struggle with the idea of being across all those platforms. Like that is just feels so freaking overwhelming when you're starting.
I was just going to say, I had help, guys. So a lot of that stuff I did myself until I could afford to get help. And so now I have an amazing, and a big shout out to Renee, who is listening. Renee is my VA, and I would be she's in the Philippines, and I love her to death, and I would be lost without her. So once you get a little bit of traction, you will need help, because it's not possible, and you need to utilize automation and tools. So we use a wonderful program called FeedHive, which allows us to pre-populate our social media posts and schedule them. That's the only way we can imagine it. And then on top of that, I do my own stuff. So I'll just randomly comment on something or share posts, or there's that. But you've got to keep regular posting on those socials, and the only way to manage it is with the scheduling tool.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And a team.
Yeah. And that could be a part-time VA for, to
Correct.
start with, or somebody just a few hours a week even.
There are so many amazing VAs across the planet who love to do this. So Renee loves to create beautiful graphics for the business, and she does it with ease and grace. I don't have to do it. I'm happy.
Yes,
and then I can focus on
my VA Jill is listening right now, and she helped me set this whole stream up today. So it is hard to do it all on your own.
It is very hard to do it on your own, and you don't get to this point yourself. So, and I've got a VA who is actually an online business manager who helps with all the tech. Yes. So again, a big shout out to Jen, who looks after Everyday Women's Network, the platform, because an OTT platform like Netflix is kind of a big deal. So we're all learning together about the programming, how it works, how to upload, and now how to live stream. And then once we get that done, we'll be working out how to use the e-commerce plugin for the network. So you just keep growing and learning step by step, one thing by one thing. I used to work really, really hard, really long hours. Since I had my little cancer scare early in the year, I've gone, okay, I need to take this back just a little bit. And now I've actually plugged in time for me. And for Mondays, for instance, that's me and team time. So that's when the girls and I have a totally female team, apart from the developers in India. Big shout out to WebNexus, who are our platform developers. And I meet and spend time with them. So, and it's about learning as you go to do things smarter and use those automations to help you do the things that you need to do.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I know that I was working some really long hours, and then I still wasn't getting to things that were at the bottom of my list. And so I'm sure Jill is listening, but she's like, "Come on, when are we editing these videos? And come on, we're gonna." And so having that accountability, in whatever way, shape, or form that comes, is it just keeps you moving forward. Otherwise, these things become barriers. Yeah. So whatever, for me, it's often tech, but for other people, it's just showing up.
And don't think that, so my challenge was showing up as Toni. The second challenge was thinking I was too old to get my head around the tech. And it just takes me a little longer, and I have to simplify everything or Tonify things so that I get it. So then, and the value of that is, though, that I can pretty simply explain to someone, okay, you need to do this, this, and this. And in setting up the platform, our brief to the developers was, this has to be bulletproof simple. People need to be able to go bang, 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 done. Simple. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, you mentioned that your content could be online for 20, 30 years beyond.
Absolutely.
Okay, but it
never goes away.
That freaks some people out. So how do you mentally, because I have people in my network who are scared about commenting on a LinkedIn post.
Yes.
There's an insecurity. I find it's not something that I personally relate to, because I'm probably quite an oversharer.
I relate to it. I relate to that.
Do you?
I'll tell you. Absolutely. So I discovered that I had a lot of deep-seated fear around showing up and being me. And I had to learn that if you're prompted to comment on socials and it's within, and it's a reasonable comment, it's not aggressive, it's not bullying, then you should do that because, and the reason behind this is, and I had to learn this, by you not showing up and you not commenting, you are depriving the world or the person that needs to hear and read your comment of that moment of clarity or progression or moving forward for them. So if you don't do it, it's not actually hurting you. It's actually stopping you show up as you're meant to show up. Because we all have intuition. Women are very good at shutting down intuitive thoughts. But girls, if you're listening and you intuitively feel like you need to comment on something, please don't. Please don't stop yourself. Please comment. Please support. And that's part and parcel of supporting each other. When you comment on someone else's post, when you share someone else's post, not only do you amplify them, but you amplify yourself. Okay? So it's a dual thing. And it's not about whether it's wrong, right, or stays on the internet for 10,000 years. We're all on the internet. All of us. We're like, don't think that because you don't comment or you don't show up that you're not anywhere to be found. You are. And that's not something you need to be fearful of unless you're sprouting words that are harmful to society. And I'm talking about bullying. I'm talking about comments and things that hurt other people. The rest of it, no, comment away. Don't stop yourself. And you need to do it to get the confidence to keep doing it. Yeah? So it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it won't grow and it won't get big and it won't get strong. Yeah? But you're also depriving the world of your genius. And there's someone out there that needs to hear from Natalie today about something. And you won't ever know that. You won't ever know that. But just know that there is always someone watching, listening that needs to hear what you have to say. And when you don't do that and don't do it authentically, you're depriving that person of amplifying you and themselves. Yeah?
And that's why I feel personal branding or thought leadership is so valuable. And this is why I teach this in my program and also my one-on-one work. Personal branding is not all about the glossy images.
It's not.
It creates that framework so that you know you do we talk about inner work. I suppose it is inner work, but you take time to really, really understand who you are, what you stand for, what your values are. Just like a company, what you're on a mission to achieve, your vision. That's just part of it. But then understanding your audience. So we do a lot. I've been hosting target audience workshops for years where we go into detail to create personas. And at the time you think, oh, what am I doing that for? But
that's fascinating work.
When you go back and you look at that, and then I know on those days where I'm having in a funk and you think, oh, what's the point? You go back to that and you go, oh, that's the impact. That's what I want to help with. So I'm constantly driven to help women particularly, but men and women to stand up and have their voices heard. And so
that's right.
I've got to keep doing that.
It's not just women. Men have similar struggles, but for women, it's ingrained in our DNA to be quiet and shut up, essentially. And for many women in my friend circle, in my greater network, many of us are going, hell no, I don't want to spend the next 50 years of my life being quiet and hiding. And so it is what it is. I am who I am. You're going to see me warts and all, and that's a good thing. We need to make sure that the women in their 20s and their teens are seeing women talk about the stories, talk about difficulties, talk about things that are not right. That's the only way we bring equality to business conversations, global conversations, is by encouraging women to speak up. And yes, I know a lot of men have similar struggles, but my experience is that women struggle with a deep unworthiness that is in our DNA from the get-go.
Getting past that imposter syndrome. So
Yeah.
how do you move past imposter syndrome? Because I do feel like everyone
Oh gosh.
has it.
Every day I'll have a moment where that little voice in my head goes, who the hell do you think you are? And I just smile and nod and say, thank you. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but it's okay. I've got this. See that big vision up there that looks like this, and this? That's where I'm headed. So thank you, but bye for now.
And then it becomes the impact you're creating for other people. So you can take your part out of it. That's how it works for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was just going to say, my biggest pleasure in life is seeing other people succeed. And for the longest time, women have not been good at supporting other women in particular. And so now I think is a time for women to support each other and champion each other and go, Nat, that was just the best interview, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we need to be doing that. We need to be supporting women. And as you know, in Australia, we have this thing called the tall poppy syndrome. So that is always in the back of our head. I have beautiful American and Canadian friends who have no idea what that looks like or feels like, which is fantastic. That's why I love talking to them.
I mean, I am Australian. I've grown up in Australia, but I did spend nearly a decade in Canada.
Yes.
And I think that helps in, paying less attention. I don't think about tall poppy syndrome as much. So I wonder if that, but yeah, it is part of our culture. So,
yeah. And to pull people down, and part of that idea is why I started the network as well, because traditional media, traditional channels, they're so negative. The news is so negative. I want to fill our network with positive stories, positive films, positive documentaries, positive content that reinforces that women are goddesses, and we need to be reminded of it every day of our lives.
So I have the link for the Everyday Women's Network, which I can share.
Thank you.
So I'll put it in everywhere. Again, tech is not my strength, so I'll probably do it afterwards.
That's fine.
But and I'll add it to my newsletter as well. But
it's
how do we get involved?
It's EWNTV.online. So just like you subscribe to Netflix, you subscribe to Everyday Women's Network, and we're growing and adding content all the time. And at the moment, because we've just launched, we've got 3 months for the price of one. So that's running until the end of September. So for $6.95,
and that's Australian dollars.
It's
US
geolocated. So
okay. Yep.
Goes to if you're in the US, it's US. If you're in Australia, it's Australian. If you're et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
But that gives you access to the network, and you can go in and see what we're creating. The other side of that is for anyone listening who is already producing content, videos, lives, et cetera, I want to chat to you about getting your content on this platform for women. So the bigger vision is to encourage women with women's content, to have advertising that encompasses diversity and the different sorts of women, the different races, et cetera, that our traditional media just doesn't. We don't get a say in the stories. We don't get featured. Our advertising is skewed. I want to change that. I want my granddaughter to have access to a network, a TV network that has information, education, entertainment that is female focused, and try and do things differently. We also have a revenue sharing model as well, but I can tell you about that if you jump on a call.
Yes, good idea. So I'll add your contact info as well. But yeah, amazing. Again, I could probably talk to you for another half an hour quite easily. So that's the power of Toni and your soothing voice. So
Thank you. I still see, Natalie, when someone says that, it still makes my heart skip a beat because I'm just me and I fundamentally think that I'm just a normal middle-aged gal and I'm just doing what I'm called to do. And so
but
in
you've come
doing
up
that,
against these barriers and
oh God, yes.
you've burst through them though. So that's where you're different and pretty
And I'm
incredible.
not saying it's easy, but you can do it. And the other, again, going back to that one step at a time. Some days it's a 5 minutes. Let's just get through this next 5 minutes. Let's just get through this next 5 minutes. Sooner enough, you'll be at the end of the day and you've gotten through another day. Sometimes that's what my days feel like. Yeah.
Great advice. So I know we're out of time.
I'm
is there
sorry.
anything? No, I'm happy. Is there anything that you would? Well, you've just said just get through the next 5 minutes. But is there anything else you would advise someone who's starting out in entrepreneurship or wanting to live stream? Even anything they should do?
Ask questions. Ask lots of questions and don't be afraid of asking questions. So often people will contact me and go, how do you do XYZ? And usually we've got some little resource that will help them with that. And if I don't know the answer, then I'll go ask this person because they'll be able to answer that more adequately than I can. And sometimes it's about leveraging people that have already got the experience and doing it that way. You don't have to know everything in business. That would be a key pointer. You don't have to know everything. Yeah. You have to know some basics, but don't stress about not understanding tech because there are all sorts of ways around it. I know, I've done it.
Yep, and I'm getting through it too. So yeah, 100% on the tech thing.
Exactly.
But yeah, thank you so much, Toni.
Thank you, Natalie.
So good to talk to you.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say is one of the key components to striving and growing a business is having key help. And one of the key helps and that help that I've had the whole way through is around marketing and social media. So reach out to Natalie who has that experience and let someone else help you. And those people are there to help. Like that's their passion. So let them help. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Thanks, Toni. All right.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
No